Hello, Miami. This is 305 Sports Now, your home podcast and channel for all things Miami sports related. I am Will, and joining us today is my old friend, my good buddy. Finally, we get him back on 305 Sports Now from the ATL, Mr. William Quintero. How you doing, sir?
Finally, man. This is how long have we been talking about this now? Since good Lord. It was so long ago. Canes are going to be, 10-0 and going to be, getting ready to play in the ACC title game. And
I know.
I guess here we are.
The last time you were on here, we were doing Heat playoffs.
That's right. Yeah, that's
and
right.
we were saying so long, Manny Diaz, and so on. That was our thing. So yeah, you're actually down here about a couple weeks ago for your daughter's birthday, right?
Just actually a few days ago.
A few days ago.
I got back. What's today? Tuesday.
Yeah,
I got back
Tuesday,
in town on this past weekend sometime. This past weekend. I think it was Friday that I got back in town.
That's nice.
So yeah, I was down there for about 6 days. My daughter's birthday. Went to the Florida State game. Still recovering from that one.
So am I.
And yeah, man, I mean, it was outside of that, it was, outside of the game, it was definitely a great visit. The game, different story.
Yeah. Well, going to your daughter for a split second, I remember when you first announced basically to the church, we used to go to the same church, that you're having a child, and now your daughter's 21 years old, man. Congratulations, man.
20 years old. Appreciate it. Yeah, man. It's hard to believe. Everywhere, most places I go with her, people still think she's like my girlfriend or my sister or something. So, the running joke with me and her is she's the one that looks old and I clearly look young. So, that's what I tell myself. That's what I tell her, keep her grounded a little bit.
Yeah, but you're 43, 44 years old and you're done. I'm 42 and my kid's about to turn 3. So I got ways to go.
It's a little bit different. Yeah, man, 21, I'm done. I'm 100% done. There'll be no more of those in my future. But yeah, man, she's amazing. And I still, I can't believe she's 21, but yeah, man, had a little get together for her. Had some family, some friends over and stuff. And all the people that came out and kind of helped make it a great day, man. We definitely appreciate them for it. We had a good time. So yeah, man.
Good. How's your mom doing?
She's good. She was out, she was there, short and mean as ever. She's good, healthy, and trying to, she's making it. She's good, man. She's good.
That's good. Well, when you see both of them again, tell them I said hello.
Most definitely.
And so on. I said my best, of course, as usual.
For sure.
All right. So, well, we just made a couple chuckles at the Canes, especially at the behest of the Florida State game in particular. So, and like you said, we had extremely high expectations for the Canes this year. I actually thought they would overachieve in comparison to what the pundits were saying, including here locally. I actually thought they could win 10 games because with Manny Diaz, last season, they were literally 8 points away from winning the Coastal. They could have been 10-2 as easily as they were 7-5. So I had high expectations for Coach Cristobal, but that hasn't been the case. The Canes are currently 5-5, and they had some very disappointing losses, to teams like Middle Tennessee. They had the Duke game. They lost a heartbreaker to North Carolina, and they got shellacked by Florida State. So it hasn't been a good year. It's been a very disappointing year, and ESPN was rightfully to say an underachieving year. What's your perspective on as a fan, of course, what you saw on this year?
I mean, you start with the obvious, right? I mean, you go with the record, right? 5-5. I think when so we were talking about when Manny arrived, or I'm sorry, Mario, when he arrived, immediately expectations were, they were through the roof. I mean, I'd be lying if I said otherwise. I know on my end, given his track record, given what he had done at Oregon, just recently, my expectations were, was I thinking national title? Obviously not. I was thinking, we'd make an ACC title game. I don't think given the state of the ACC and specifically the Coastal, I don't think it was a stretch, right? And when you're looking at what, just like you mentioned, the pundits, right? I mean, the people, the people who know, the people on ESPN, the people on Fox Sports, the people, you know, on Twitter that, you know, that you follow locally with, you know, with the Herald and you know, all the reporters and everything locally. You know, it wasn't just like a local sentiment, right? When you're looking at it nationwide and what people were saying, everybody was saying the right things about Mario. Everybody was saying not only, you know, that we get the right coach in place, but we got the right staff in place. And so given that there was a, I think, a view of this roster now that we're 10 games in, there's a view of this roster that we had, you know, coming in that told us, hey, you know what? If Manny did that with that roster, right now, Tyler Van Dyke has, you know, an extra year under his belt, you know, has an entire offseason of being the starter, you know, so on and so forth. There's depth at running back, you know, there's, you know, again, a roster that you thought had talent, and had more depth than clearly they've shown they've had. I think going in, you know, I was under the impression, I was like, hey, you know what? You know, let's call it 9 wins. You know, I think Vegas was calling for 8.5, I think was the over under.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I'll go over and I'll give them 9. Clearly we're 10 games in, 5-5. You know, we're definitely not going to see 8 wins. And so, you know, disappointment, I think is probably the right word for it. You know, I think when you're at Miami, I think you got to know that the expectations, you know, are titles, you know, and I don't think we really realized that there were issues that Mario and the staff weren't going to be able to address this year. So
Yeah, I mean, it was very difficult for me as a Kings fan. I'm always optimistic, and I seriously thought, you know, as far as what Mario would bring to the table, I did suspect 10 wins, and I was not one of those guys that felt that the wide receiving core was going to be a weakness of this football team. And the reason why I say that is because like Jacoby George, Romello Brinson, you know, Keyshawn Smith, you know, they were all highly recruited wide receivers. So yeah, I get it. You know, you lost Charleston Rambo and you lost, you know, Mike Harley to the NFL. But I mean, I still thought that this roster as wide receivers was good enough to beat Duke, was good enough to beat Middle Tennessee, was good enough to could be competitive against Florida State, you know, as well. So it was pretty much be able to score a touchdown against Virginia, for crying out loud. You know, so I really thought that this team would be competitive, and I really didn't expect a regression, you know, especially in the offensive side of the ball. Defense, you know, the big plays have been given up all year. They made the right move finally in the 10th game of the year and putting Cam Kitchens much further deep into defensive backfield, which allowed him to get those 3 interceptions. But nonetheless, there have been shades where the defense could be solid. You know, the front 7 before the Florida State game was one of the tops in the ACC in sacks, you know, and tackles for loss and in run defense. So that the defense had shown signs. Well, the weakness of the defense was mainly the secondary, you know, which they addressed in the Ja Tech game, and they're addressing in the offseason with recruiting and more than likely also with the transfer portal. But I'm going to read some stats for you. Offensively, this team is averaging 25 points per game. All right, 25 points per game, and that's only because they scored 35 against Georgia Tech. They have 30 touchdowns. 10 of them were just from the Bethune game. All right, 10 of them just from the Bethune game. And they're averaging 3.9 yards per rushing per game. That's a combination of Bethune and this last game, you know, in particular. So the offensive numbers have been absolutely putrid this year, you know, altogether. Defense as well. We can't give Kevin Steele a pass either. You know, it shouldn't have taken him a long time to realize you may have to call more zone and have your safeties play a little deeper, or have safeties that know what they're doing and not be caught out of position, i.e. James Williams and Alvin Blades. But actually, I want to get your perspective on the defense. Like, what do you think? Because, like I said, you know, I'm not happy with Kevin Steele, you know, this year the way he's acted as coordinator. But there have been times where you've seen flashes. This team could be great, especially at the front 7. So, what do you think?
Yeah, you know, I think the defense as a whole, you know, when you were looking at it before the season started, you liked what they did in the portal. because they addressed, at least with some depth, they addressed the D line, right? They brought in some guys. Akeem Mesidor was a huge get in the transfer portal. It was a guy that everybody wanted. A guy that had offers from USC. I mean, had big time offers because of what he showed at West Virginia. So that was a huge get. This kid Jake Lichtenstein, is a Miami kid. He was at USC. Obviously, a guy, like I think a 6th-year senior or something, guy with some experience playing in the Pac-12, so on and so forth. So I mean, you got, plus with what you were bringing back, right? You bring back Leonard Taylor, Jared Harrison Hunt. You had some guys there already, so you figure, okay, add some experience, to the D line, and you've got something. The linebacker core coming in was always going to be my biggest worry. They were just void of talent, void of depth, void of experience, at least meaningful experience. Now we're kind of starting to see, Wesley Bassane, again, we're 10 games in, starting to kind of see him, and what it is that they were so excited about coming into the season. A guy like Caleb Johnson that people expected more from when he came in from UCLA in the transfer portal. So it's been kind of a mixed bag, with the linebacker core, the DBs, kind of same thing. I think we've got great talent at the safety position, but it's young talent, right? James Williams, is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? I think they're kind of still trying to figure that out. I think he's been, this year, he's kind of been up and down, which I didn't expect. Cam Kinchens showed out in the Georgia Tech game. He's really come on and really been, the leader of that back end. Avonte Williams, hopefully they're going to find a place for him, because Avonte Williams is, super highly recruited kid. A kid that once he figures everything out, I mean, you feel like you kind of have to have all three of those guys on the field. Now add to that Markeith Williams, a four-star kid, played really well in that Georgia Tech game. Made some good tackles. Looks like he's a really sure tackler. Not a huge kid, but a rangy kid, a kid that can intercept the ball. He's like I said, a sure tackler. At corner, right? Kind of, again, a mixed bag, right? Because I expected more from Tyreek Stevenson. I expected Tyreek Stevenson to come in this year and like solidify himself in terms of like a team leader, a guy who was going to make himself I wouldn't say a high NFL draft pick, right? But a guy who was maybe kind of work his way into that maybe 3rd or 4th round. He's got size, he's got some speed, he's got some physicality to him. Probably at this point, I'd imagine he's a little bit probably better suited to go to the next level as a safety. I don't know that he's going to be a corner at the next level if he does get drafted or make a roster, but definitely inconsistent, especially when you consider who you have on that side, right? When you consider Kevin Steele and how everybody said he was a great hire. You have Charlie Strong as your linebackers coach. Obviously, a guy who's been a successful DC, he's been a head coach. A guy who's very well respected. In the profession. Jamil Adad, you got from Georgia. Listen, the only defensive backfield in the last 6-7 years who can really rival Georgia in terms of talent, what development, what they put in the NFL is Ohio State. Because Georgia is right up there. I'd probably put them at number 1. Somebody may, other people may say Ohio State, but again, it's whatever your flavor is, but definitely one of the best defensive backfields over the last few years. Add to that what he did at West Virginia and the whole deal. So all those factors considered, I expected more from the defense than what we've gotten. Along with that, though, football being the ultimate team sport, the offense hasn't helped them either.
No. If
we're being totally honest, right? Because, again, with their, putrid, how many adjectives do we come up with for that offense? So, it's such an interesting sport when you talk about football and how each unit affects the other one. Offense affects defense affects offense, so on and so forth. So, we haven't really helped the units haven't helped each other out, but again, all things considered, yeah, did we expect more from the offense? Yes. Did we expect more from the defense? 100%. I think there's signs. Again, that Georgia Tech game, let's not pretend that they beat, they didn't beat Georgia, they beat Georgia Tech, but you had some guys, I was in the stands, I got to see some guys really making some plays. Like I said, Wesley Bassane was all over the field. I mentioned Markeith Williams. On the D line, Najee Kelly is becoming a force. I'm so excited to see what that kid does next year. Cyrus Moss is kind of starting to once he starts putting on some weight and figuring things out, I think he's going to be a force. You've got some guys. I think you've got some guys, some young guys that you got to be excited about. This year's a wash. It is what it is. But moving forward, I think we have the foundation, to build with. And I've been telling people, and it's my opinion, these guys didn't forget how to coach, man.
Yeah, I know.
You're not going to tell me Charles Strong all of a sudden that he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Jamil Adai, he forgot how to coach DBs. You can't underestimate in any sport. You can't underestimate the change of systems. You can't always account for how that's going to affect the guys that are already on the roster who have been under a certain system for their entire careers. Guys who maybe an Al Blades, a Gilbert Frierson, a DJ Ivy, guys that have been in a system, coming in for multiple years, and all of a sudden it gets switched up on them. Not everybody's built for that, and that system doesn't necessarily suit, all those guys that were there before. So, it's been a process. It hasn't been a fun process, but I think we've got the guys in place on the staff, and we've got a good foundation in terms of players to build on. And I trust Mario, and I trust what it is. I trust his eyes. I trust the staff he put together. Those guys are all great recruiters. They've proven that. And I think we're heading in the right direction. It's not where we want to be. 5-5 is not where, if you would have told me to put money on it at the beginning of the season, I guarantee you I wouldn't put money on 5-5. But it's where we're at. And we just got to continue, they got to continue to build and just acquire talent, build depth, and continue to develop players. And I think you got the right guys in place to do so.
Yeah. In reference to Tyreek Stevenson, I think Tyreek Stevenson's just on the wrong side of the field. I think Tyreek would have been better suited covering a slot receiver more so than the team's fastest, lengthier wide receiver, in any game that he's facing. So I think that's more or less how I see Tyreek. I think Tyreek is in a better position if he's covering. I don't disagree with you on the part of being a safety. He has like Javon Holland frame, as far as physicality and ball awareness, because he does have that. He's just been in this year, he's been out of position several times, or he's just been flat out beat, But I do think that if Tyreek was covering, maybe a slot receiver in particular, he'd show out more. But however, that being said, I do think like as far as Ivy and Blade stuff, I think they've underachieved per their star rankings. These guys, they were part of what was known as the Storm 18 class, and they were supposed to be, ball hawks and no fly zone and and so on. And that hasn't been the case. They've been humiliated pretty much even before Cristobal took over with Steele. They were beat up pretty good by for years. I would say, giving up big plays. In particular. But I do agree with you, as far as the defense goes, do I think they're in the right position? No, I actually think the linebacker core has overachieved this year. I know some people are going to be like, what are you talking about? I go, well, Corey Flagg, in many games this year, who everyone thought was the weakest link of the football team as far as the front seven goes, has actually in some cases led the team in tackles or been, top 2 in tackles, throughout the season. So Corey Flagg has greatly, overachieved, as far as he was perceived. And he's only a sophomore. That's what people forget. This is a very, very, very young front seven. All right. Leonard Taylor was a true sophomore. Mesidor is a sophomore as well, at least a second-year sophomore. I can't really remember.
I believe that he may be a third-year sophomore.
A third-year sophomore. Okay.
But I think he's a third-year sophomore.
Okay, a third-year. Okay, and so he's still, a third-year sophomore. And then you have Jackson still young, as well. You just mentioned Najee Kelly. Najee Kelly is going to be a stud freshman. Wesley Basaint, freshman. And Mario just said he's going to start, by the way, exactly. He's going to take a lot of snaps. Have you seen that kid? I don't know if you've seen that kid's huddle. That kid could not only kill you, stopping the run, he could also cover, and zone defense.
He made it in the Georgia Tech game. I mean, he was, all over the field.
Yeah.
He was all over the field in coverage. He was, sideline to sideline. No, he's a complete linebacker.
He is
at Miami Central. Where he started at. He did it all. Just like you mentioned, he stopped the run. He played coverage. The guy was a super highly recruited kid for a reason. He was a high 4-star kid. A lot of people thought he was the best linebacker coming out. Not only in South Florida but in the country. Definitely one of the better linebackers in the country coming out. So, again, I think the foundation is there, man. Again, you mentioned a lot of names right there. A lot of those guys, being young guys. But it's going back to Corey Flagg. Corey Flagg was one of those guys where the measurables aren't there with him. He's more of an instinctual kind of guy. I mean, playing football in Texas, he was one of those guys that was just a tackling machine. He was always around the ball, not a super big guy, not a super fast guy, but just instinctual, always around the ball. He makes good plays. And he's developed this year for sure. You mentioned that. I mean, he's definitely been, one of those guys that I don't know that Corey Flagg is ever going to be the best linebacker on a truly solid, on a truly great defense, if that makes sense, right? I think he's a guy who, he's a glue guy, he's a leader, he's instinctual, makes good plays, the whole deal. But again, in coverage, he's a little bit of a liability. Yeah. He's not the fastest guy. So again, he relies a lot on, but he's been in the right places this year.
Yeah.
You see him, they break down his film and everything, in and around the line of scrimmage. I mean, he fills holes, he takes on blockers, he's been making the right reads and making the right plays. Again, I like him. He's not great, but he's a solid guy. And at this point and where we're at, he's somebody who has developed nicely and they're depending on him to continue to do so.
Well, when you have linebacker depth that's coming real soon, especially with this class, you don't need him to cover. All you have to do is have him kill the quarterback or kill the running back. It's gonna be his position. You're not gonna need him to cover.
He's proven, in coverage, man. He's for all the strides he's made. Everywhere else, coverage, I think, is just going to be one of those things that he's kind of a short, squatty guy.
Yeah.
I don't think he's not built to cover. I don't think he's just going to be one of those guys who's going to be more in the box kind of guy. And I think he'll be solid there, maybe covering some running backs kind of close to the line of scrimmage. But if you put him against somebody in the slot, or you put him against a shifty running back, that's just not where he's going to excel.
No, absolutely not. We're going to get back into that because we're going to talk about the recruits that are coming in, for the 2023 class, and we'll readdress the Corey Flagg situation as well, because we're going to talk about a couple linebackers that are coming in. The offense, we talked about the defense a little bit. The offense, okay, all right. Chaney's injured. I get it.
I may need to go pour a drink for.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh my God. Offense, man.
I get the injuries and stuff like that, but I'm really, really, really sorry. Before I tell you what I think, I'm sure Josh Gaddis is the topic we're gonna go. Staying or should he stay or should he go? Yeah. Your perspective.
So, we'll start with his recent history, right? Okay. Burroughs Award winner, right? It's not that's not some, in my opinion, right? It's not some BS award. When you're talking about there's 130 FBS teams, you have 10 on-field coaches, right? Look how many people are in the running for that award. I mean, he won the award for the best assistant coach in the country, right? That's something. That's not nothing. I think when you're talking about a guy like Josh Gaddis and the system that he runs, the perspective that we have to have is who he replaced. And you're talking about a guy in Rhett Lashley and a system that he ran that is from, if you listen to everybody and how they break things down, it's literally night and day. You're talking about a power run as opposed to a true spread system. That changes everything from, the guys blocking to the guys throwing to, the guys running routes to, like, it literally changes everything. And this upward trajectory that we thought TBD was on, all of a sudden kind of came to, to this grinding halt, because in my opinion, he's now in a system that it's not like this one read system like Rhett Lashley had. right? It's, it's everybody's kind of, doing whatever, and he, one guy, boom, and he hits him, and that's it. Um, look at what I've seen, like Rhett Lashley now the last couple weeks. I think a couple weeks ago they hung like 77 on
Houston.
somebody on
Oh, I
Houston,
saw.
and
I definitely saw.
I was like, oh, if we had half of those points, I would be happy. If you gave me half of those, give me 38 of those, and I would be thrilled.
Yeah.
They hung 77 on Houston. So that obviously doesn't help things, right? I mean, when you're sitting there looking at, what Gaddis is doing and now what Rhett Lashley is doing, doesn't help things because it's obviously very easy to compare. Going back to the change in systems, and again, it's where I think a lot of people tend to not really give that type of change the credit that it really, that it really deserves. When you're talking about, again, you're changing systems, and you're not going spread to spread. You're going spread to this power run, and whatever the case may be. So say all that to say, I understand what it's like, I have eyes, I have ears. I understand what people are saying about Gaddis. It's hard to at times not buy into that based on some of the stats you read. Again, you mentioned those stats would be their numbers as a whole aren't great. Now you separate FBS teams versus FCS teams, and now that your FBS numbers are even worse. Mm-hmm. That being said, I think you have to give that guy a chance to bring in, assuming he's going to be here next year. So going back to that, I'll start with this. I don't think he's going anywhere.
Okay.
A lot of people coming into the year were of the thought that, he'll be around for, given what he did at Michigan, and for whatever everybody's opinion on why he left Michigan. A lot of people expected him to be, one of the leading candidates for, some of these, open FBS jobs. I don't think he's the kind of guy that takes an FCS job. That's just my opinion. I think he's at the point now where he can sit around and wait for the job that kind of suits him. I don't think he's gonna leave, or even like a group of 5 job. I don't think he leaves for a group of 5 job, and that's just my opinion. I don't think he's done himself any favors. I don't think he's going to be at the top of anybody's list when you're talking about some of these, like Auburn is open, Nebraska's open, Georgia Tech is open, so on and so forth. I don't know that he would be at the top of any one of those candidate lists. That being said, like I talked about, Charlie Strong, Kevin Steele, this guy didn't just forget how to coach. I think it's a simple matter of not so simple, but when you're looking at the offense, you're starting with one, you change systems. You put Tyler Van Dyke in a system that probably doesn't suit him the best. And then now add to that the issues that we have on the offensive line. The offensive line has been, not great, to say the least, right? I mean, I don't want to insult them or anything, but they just haven't been good. Again, they haven't picked up that system. You have guys that were running in a spread system last year. Now they're in this, power system that they're just not built for. There's been injuries. Zion Nelson hasn't been healthy the entire year. You have some departures we talked about before the show started. Corey Gaynor, not being there probably, didn't help things. Nevon Donaldson, that we expected maybe, the guy had been in the program for like 6 years, not there. You've got some guys that were highly recruited. They just haven't worked out. I don't know exactly what the issues are there, but they have not lived up to the billing in terms of their star rating, coming out of high school. Add to that the issues at running back, right? We came into this year thinking, hey man, there's 6 running backs. We're going to have, talent backing up talent, strongest position group on the offense, injuries to Durante Citizen, injuries to Don Chaney, Jalen Knighton has been kind of up and down. Thad Franklin, kind of same thing. Man, so the receivers, I'm like you, I expected the receivers to not be an issue. Like I remember coming in, everybody was like, man, they're dropping everything. They can't catch a cold in practice. I truly didn't expect the receiver position to be that big an issue. I understand what we're replacing in Mike Harley and Charleston Rambo, but I thought we had enough bodies there and enough talent and enough depth to sustain those departures. I thought we'd be able to just throw numbers at that problem, and when we'd have 3 or 4 people emerge. Colby Young has been a pleasant surprise. A guy that came in from junior college, you didn't really know what you were getting in him. But he's been a pleasant surprise. So the offense, there's a lot to digest there. Original question, Josh Gaddis, I think he comes back. I think that they, again, another off season, with some guys learning that system, given the health of the running back position, possibly Jakari Brown taking over. I'm going to choose to be optimistic. I'm going to choose to be positive about it. I'm not going to fall into, like a lot of Miami fans have, oh, he's got to go. That guy, I refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe that guy just all of a sudden landed in Miami, forgot how to coach. Would we like to have seen him tailor that offense maybe to what he had on the roster? Yeah, everybody would, obviously, right? Because that's one of the qualities of a coach, right? Of a really good coach, is taking what you have and tailoring them to your system. Yes, but hasn't happened. We've had a lot of different issues on that offense. I'm going to choose to be positive. I think he comes back, and I think we right the ship next season with him.
Yeah. I think he comes back only because of the reason that Mario likes continuity, and I think he'll have him back just to give him another chance. I'm one of those fans. Like, I would like to see a change, and the reason I like to see a change is because I think that, and to his credit, him and Mario have adapted, but I do think that the numbers have been inexcusable. All right. The play calling has been horrendous, in my opinion. His routes even when he's gone spread. I think I would say TVD's best game was North Carolina, and they just slung it, all over the field. But I think, even when he's in the spread offense, a air raid type of offense that he's trying to, like, I guess, accommodate, for TVD and these receivers, the play calling still takes too long. To get to the quarterback, to hike the ball. This offense, whether he likes it or not, is made for an air raid. I mean, it really is. It's made for a spread. You came in here to that kind of offense, and I think you kind of have to adapt to your personnel. When you get your recruits in and stuff like that, then you could do whatever it is you did over in Michigan. But the kids, if you're recruiting Florida, these are not Big Ten guys, all right? These are South Florida speedsters. They run a spread, and basically in every high school right now, they run a spread offense. Your skill position players, they get open, they get separation. He also coaches the wide receivers, as well. He's not just, the offensive coordinator. He's also wide receivers. These receivers have regressed under his watch. Kobe Young is a very pleasant surprise. He should have been playing early on in the year, instead of Michael Redding Jr., who had whom I like personally. Don't get me wrong. I don't like bashing kids in the air, because in the end, we forget they're 19 years old. They basically just went to the prom yesterday. But I mean, Kobe Young does not have the drops problem that Michael Redding has had. So I think, from a perspective of personnel, your competition, there was like 10 times this year, William, where you were less than 5 yards to go to score a touchdown, and you couldn't punch it in, and it was run. Oh, let's throw it on fourth down. It was just absolutely ridiculous. Listen, my opinion, when Dan Enos was hired by Manny Diaz, I liked the hire, and I thought Dan Enos should be given another year. Dan Enos, in my opinion, got fired for less. All right. A Dan Enos-led offense, came back being down 42-7 against Georgia Tech when N'Kosi Perry took the ball, and they went full spread, So that's my thing. Listen, man, I love Brett Lashley. Okay. I love Brett Lashley. I was one of the ones that defended him last year when the fans wanted him fired, after the Alabama and Michigan State game. I said something's not right with Derek King, and we were both right because we both agreed. And then Tyler Van Dyke comes in and he just lights it up. So I just think that, as what I've seen right now, and there's also some murmurs that probably Jim Harbaugh is the one that called the plays, not so much Josh Gaddis. He just got the credit for it. Of course, you get that conversation when the coordinator now has full reign and it doesn't work out very well. That's what it could have, should have. That's a hearsay, right? That's not necessarily true. But I just think that we've really regressed on offense. We should have manhandled, Middle Tennessee. All right. I mean, Tyler Van Dyke looked horrendous in that game, so he's regressed as well, as far as the offense goes. And I like you say, it's hard for you to believe that you just forgot how to coach. It's hard for me to believe that TVD forgot how to throw a football, on many occasions, because he was literally missing receivers left and right. Jake Garcia is another one. Jake Garcia was everybody's calling him Tate Martell 2.0. I personally think he's better than Tate Martell. He had that one game against Connecticut. I know it's a garbage team, but he was accurate. He was fast. He scrambled. He actually lit a spark against Middle Tennessee. He actually got that one touchdown to Keyshawn Smith and that big touchdown pass to Colby Young. So there's something there. So I think personally, I don't think Mario's going to make a change because I do think that he's standing by his guy. But I think as a coordinator, you need to adapt to your personnel. And at the moment, he's proven he just can't. His bunch sets are way too close to the tackle position, in particular. Again, his play calling, even though they beat Georgia Tech, it was very predictable. It was hard for him to score in the third and fourth quarter. It was very predictable. Run Jacory to the middle, run Jacory to the right. It was, he put Jake Garcia in a bad position in the Florida State game as well. 3rd and 5, you run Jacory twice. You put Jake Garcia backed up basically in your own territory. He throws a pick. I mean, so I just think as far as offensive personnel goes, he's just hasn't cut it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I think Miami would be better off, with someone like Tom Herman, or Garrett Riley over at TCU. That's a name that's been floating around. If they do get rid of Josh Gaddis, hiring Garrett Riley. I researched Garrett Riley before, and Garrett Riley has called offenses for a considerable amount of time, including over at SMU with Sonny Dykes, that he did have access to call plays. So that's just my thing with Josh. Like I said, I'm willing to give Kevin Steele a pass because at a defensive back position, he doesn't have the players. I like to see him with Cormani McLean, and I pray to God Damari Brown, coming in. We'll see what happens with that. But as far as Gaddis goes, I'm so sorry. I love his mesh routes. Those rug routes. I love him. I love those routes because it's chaotic, for defensive backs. But if you can't block, because your line is either too injured or can't hold because it's not that kind of line, it's all for naught. So that's my thing with Gaddis. I think Mars should make a change. He's got Frank Pons, who's called plays before. He could just promote his buddy, or he could bring in a Garrett Riley, a Tom Herman. Money's no issue now with this team. They will pay to get a good OC in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm so, like I mentioned with, previously with Gaddis, I think he gets another year. Again, man, when it comes to football, man, the problems can be so complex and so layered that it really is difficult to kind of really pick out, okay, what exactly is the issue? The thing with his offense is you can pick apart so many things. Mm-hmm. Again, there's talent issues, there's depth issues, there's been injury issues. So I don't know. And again, going back to, you would have liked to have seen him kind of, tear that offense, but it's one of those, it's like, a tiger doesn't change the stripes, right? I mean, this is the offense that I run. I'm gonna recruit to that. The guys that I have here, I'm gonna try and get them to play that system. I don't know which one is right, which one's wrong, right? I mean, you have your system. How scalable it is to what it is that you have going on in terms of what you have on the roster currently. It's up to anybody to debate that and to really blame somebody or hold somebody's feet to the fire in terms of, okay, who exactly is at fault?
Yeah.
I go back to, again, this guy was brought in for a reason. I am one of those. I'm not one of those guys. Again, he's left a lot to be desired, obviously. When you're looking at what it is that we've done and what we haven't done, clearly nobody's satisfied. When you're looking at the system that he runs, I agree with you in that the South Florida athlete is not the typical Big Ten athlete, right? I mean, we in South Florida, they mass produce skill position guys, right? Your receivers, your running backs, your corners. You're gonna get playmakers at the linebacker position, the safety position, so on and so forth. We don't really, South Florida doesn't really put out a whole bunch of offensive linemen, these big offensive linemen, so on and so forth. So again, you would assume that the offensive coordinator at a school that sits regionally in an area that you should be able to just, collect skill position guys and be able to put them anywhere, and your offense should succeed, seamlessly, essentially. Again, I trust Mario. I trust his eyes. The guy is here for a reason. if the change is made, I'm not going to be one of these people who's like, oh my God, Gaddis is gone. Like, no, I mean, if he's gone and we get one of these guys, you know, again, like you mentioned, you know, the guy from TCU, you know, I think a guy who's going to come in and run a spread would be great for Miami. You know, I think you got to remember the excitement that followed Rhett Lashlee's hiring. Right, I think a lot of people in South Florida were really happy about Manny bringing in, especially after the disaster that was Dan Enos, bringing in a guy that was a spread guy like Lashley. I think the results were mixed with him. You know, for everything that he showed in terms of, like, you know, throwing the ball with TBD and the whole deal, there were obviously shortcomings in terms of running the ball. Right, we did not excel, you know, at running the ball. You know, so that's something you have to look at, and you got to know with Mario, you know where it starts. It begins and ends on the line of scrimmage. Period. You know what he's gonna try to build that offensive line. He's gonna build the defensive line, and he's gonna run the ball. They're gonna be physical, you know, at the point of attack. You know, they've called it a power spread or whatever it is, man. All that is semantics to me. Listen, at the end of the day, you know, continue to recruit, continue to develop, you know, build the offensive line, run the ball. And I think, you know, that is the beginning of a winning formula. I don't know that I want to go pure spread, because I think you see some of these spread offenses, they usually don't excel at running the ball, and that does tax your defense. You know, again, going back to how every unit, you know, affects the other unit. You run a spread, and now again, of course, if you're a fan of like Tennessee or something, you go, hey, you know, we're good. You know, defense, Schmief, like their defense is their offense. They're putting up basketball scores on guys. You know, Georgia notwithstanding. But you see what they're doing, and you know, you'd like to think, of course, why the hell can't we do that here? You know, I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is when those spread offenses are running the way you want them to run, they're fun to watch. They put up a ton of points. They really stress your defense. They stress the other defense, but again, if it's not running the right way, it can stress your defense, and then now you're 3 and out, you know, short fields, that kind of thing. So it's such a delicate balance when you're talking about, you know, what offense you're running. I'm not happy with what it is going on there. Clearly, I'm not saying I'm happy with it, but I feel like, no, listen, whether it's Gaddis, whether it's whoever it is that he brings in, I think we're going to get it right. I think there's going to be another year of the one reason why I would say Gaddis, going back to the continuity thing, because continuity is so big. You know, when you're talking, you know, all over the field, right? Because again, you know, it's repetitions, it's familiarity, all that breeds kind of continuity, and continuity is only a good thing. Now you change your OC. That now it's, again, now you're learning a new system. Everybody's learning a new system. So I truly don't know what the right answer is on that end. I need to see something better. That's my answer. I just want to see something better. Because again, you could really kind of pick out certain things and look at them and go, I don't know that I want to make a change. You know, given again the new system and now new verbiage and new everything. In my opinion, Frank Ponce is there. You know, and you brought him. He left his position as OC at App State to come down to Miami. One, he got a raise. Obviously, he's from Miami and the whole deal. To me, there's got to be something there that says that Ponce is the OC in waiting. I have to believe that.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's true. I think that's true. That's why I say you either promote your buddy or bring in a guy that's tailored more towards your talent, or tailored more towards basically the personnel that's already in Florida. Going back to what you said, I agree with you in the sense that you're right. An up-tempo offense, if it's not clicking that very day, does tire out defenses. But if you look at Alabama, I'm not saying that, I know I'm comparing a monster, you know, to right now something that's in an infancy. But with Lane Kiffin, they had the best of both worlds. They ran a spread, you know, an up-tempo spread, but they also ran the ball. Georgia right now, spread, run the ball, you know, as well. And the Miami Dolphins, okay, you're very familiar with Mike McDaniel. You're a 49ers fan, you know, in particular. Mike McDaniel loves to run the ball, but he's got two horses in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So for the first half of the season, in general, it was a pass-first team. Now with Jeff Wilson and being injected into the offense, a guy that doesn't fumble like Chase Edmonds did in particular, now you're starting to see more of that incorporation of a power team, which is what McDaniel originally wanted to do. But also you have, the quick passing game and the up tempo system that you could utilize with Jalen Waddle and with Tyreek Hill. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, you adjust to your personnel. If you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, use that to your advantage. My thing with Gaddis is the offense just takes too long. Whether it's getting the play to the quarterback, whether it's being under center too long, or in shotgun, or route development. If your line is weak, a quarterback's best friend to a depleted offensive line is a quick passing game. Look at Tua. He got his head bashed. So what are they doing? That ball's out in 2 seconds. All right, in 2 seconds. The same thing has to be with TVD. The same thing has to be with Ja'Cory, and the same thing has to be with Jake, who's ever going to be under center, for the Canes for that particular game, or in that particular driving session, and so on. So that's just my thing with Gaddis. I think Gaddis is too stubborn. To his credit, there have been times where he's gone full spread. He went full spread against North Carolina. They should have won that game if Rooster doesn't fumble. All right. They could have won that football game, to his credit. But once again, TVD got beat up quite a bit a couple times because those plays just take way too long to develop. Rhett Lashley's system was very predictable, but it was one of those systems because it was very simple. It was a very simple playbook. But the whole thing, because it was so up tempo, is okay, now try and stop me. While you're trying to catch your breath in the 95-degree, feels like 110-degree weather at Hard Rock. Try and stop it. And that's why it works so well, in particular. That's just my thing. And that's why I think a change might be needed, in particular. But I do believe it's either Frank Ponce is the next OC, or you're going to bring in somebody that could do a combo high octane, type of tempo with a running game. Because even Rhett Lashley's offense had a 4-minute offense, as well. So we'll see.
No, and I don't disagree with you on any of those points. What I will say, and some of the teams that you mentioned and stuff, in terms of like what we're, what we were looking at in terms of like when Lane Kiffin was at Alabama and so on and so forth. Like you see where it begins and ends is the offensive line. And when you're looking at that's what separates the SEC from everybody else. And you're looking at, testament to the fact that when you're looking at the draft and who it is that they're putting, in the draft, you're looking at some of these guys, or when you're looking at the first round, and it's SEC guys, it's look at who's going, the first offensive lineman off the board, the first defensive lineman off the board, so on and so forth. Like, it all begins and ends at the line of scrimmage. And those teams, what do they have in common? They're recruiting the offensive line at such a high level. Georgia and Alabama are, that, again, Clemson, so on and so forth. So you're looking at some of these guys that are in the playoff that, we haven't had a playoff yet without Alabama or Clemson in it.
Yeah.
Still to this point, this year is probably going to be the first year. But you're looking at what it is those guys are doing on the line of scrimmage, and Miami's about to find out, come Saturday, because they're going to play that D line that has 5-6 NFL players on it. Mm-hmm. The offensive line, kind of the same thing. And again, traditionally, with Alabama and Nick Saban at the helm, is those guys recruit the hell out of the offensive line. So what that does is essentially gives you, really what you need to run whatever system you want, because he gets those guys. He's got NFL guys on that line. And so he can do whatever he wants. He manhandles people at the point of attack. He gives his quarterbacks all the time in the world, to throw the ball. And on top of that, he's recruiting, this year, it's been kind of a change where they don't have the difference makers outside in terms of your receivers and your tight ends and stuff. And maybe not even at running backs. You have Jahmyr Gibbs and you don't have a whole bunch else. But traditionally, again, it's so unfair what they've done because they recruit at such a high level. Again, they have their pick of the litter at offensive line. They have their pick of the litter at receiver, at quarterback. So they do whatever they want. They can run whatever system they want and have it be successful. What the change that's been made now with Miami, and I think is a necessary one, is when you're looking at now with Ja'Cory Brown, what he did against Georgia Tech. And going back to it, I know, right, because people are going to say, oh, it's Georgia Tech. I get it. But he's a true freshman. showed really well against Georgia Tech. I mean, again, the system that Gaddis came up with for everything that they bashed him for now, you have to give him a little bit of credit because he did handle Jakari, the right way. You know, didn't, threw no picks, didn't turn it over, which
Yeah.
has been a far cry from what we've had the entire rest of the season, because Jay Garcia has been a damn turnover machine.
Yeah, he has.
TBD has turned it over a bunch. So now you got a guy in Jakari Brown that is kind of tailor made really to what this offense needs, because you have clear deficiencies at the line of scrimmage, at the offensive line. You're down. We were down, I think, 4 offensive linemen against Georgia Tech. So now a guy that I wouldn't say Jake Garcia and TBD are statues, but they don't move like Jakari Brown. So clearly you had what you need in terms of a mobile guy to address your deficiencies on the line of scrimmage. Now you have outside receivers that don't really excel in getting open, which if now you have a guy that doesn't really move, he's sitting there holding that ball, receivers aren't getting open, now you're taking sacks. So Jakari Brown, I think, was the perfect, was the perfect change at the perfect time, because he's kind of, allowing these receivers to buy some time and get open while he scrambles a little bit and gets the ball downfield. So it was great to see him in there. It was great to see, the offense, moving, running the ball. I think Jalen Knighton had like 118 yards rushing.
Yeah.
Jaleel Skinner, and Will Mallory both played well. Kobe Young played well. So I think the offense really responded to Jakari Brown. And truthfully, not only the jolt that he gave him in terms of, the running aspect of it, and we see how vital that is in today's game. Like, a guy that can run totally changes everything and stresses that defense, to where you have to, you really do have to address that. And now, the RPO game is in play, the option game is in play, so on and so forth. Like, it really, really changes the dynamic of an offense. But again, especially given what Miami's deficiencies are at the line of scrimmage, at the receiver position, having Jakari Brown play and play the way he did, not turn the ball over, it was great to see. So.
Yeah, no, I actually did give Josh Gaddis credit, for the way he ran the offense. A lot of fans got upset because it was so predictable, but when you have a true freshman in the game that hasn't gotten that many throws, under his belt, I think a simplified playbook is what's best for Jakari. So, his run options, his short passing, we saw Frank Ladson citing, in Georgia Tech, Frank Ladson has been on a milk carton, for pretty much the entire season. He actually played very well, against Georgia Tech. And then, of course, he finally got a touchdown after 9 quarters, which also drove me crazy throughout the whole season, a touchdown. So I just think, and this is not a knock on Gaddis, it's just something that has to be done. If it's more than likely going to be the same thing against Clemson, a very simplified playbook again, but you just have to block, and I do think that one of the biggest, I was looking at, it's just really funny. I was so hurt by the Florida State loss that I was looking at old first 2 seasons of Mark Richt, when he was head coach, which, by the way, he did very well with Al Golden's recruits, because all those guys were Al Golden's recruits. In particular, he knew how to use them. And I will say the one thing about Al Golden, is, and Hurley Brown will kill me if I say this because he loves Al Golden, in particular, but Al Golden did not know how to use his personnel, but he didn't know how to recruit personnel. And the reason why I say that is because every single one of those receivers that he himself recruited, like Amon Richards, Coley, and Braxton Berrios, they were all amazing blockers. Like, Braxton would take a guy downfield and run him over, i.e. the Notre Dame game when Travis Homer scored on one of the touchdowns. It was led by Braxton Berrios. So my thing is, these receivers can't block. Like, I remember in the A&M game, Romello Brinson missed on a guy and Brashard Smith got killed. So I think, moving forward, if you're gonna have Jakari Brown and you're gonna run, a lot of bubble screens and wide receiver screens and, and swing passes to the tailback and some slants and stuff like that, you're gonna have these guys are all gonna have to block. It's very important, especially at the tackle position. If you're going to do those screens again, those wide receiver screens, the tackles have got to make sure that the defensive ends or the incoming linebacker don't get in the way of that pass and get it picked or put it down. So that's just my take. So I did give Gaddis credit, in the Georgia Tech game, as far as what he did with Jakari, because Jakari needs something to get his confidence up, and he needed a simplified playbook since he really hasn't had any real action against a Power 5 team. You know, I mean, consistent action where he's like in there the whole game from start to finish. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, first week of starter reps, right? I mean, the guy's a true freshman. A talented kid. He was home. He was home. He's from Valdosta. So
Yeah.
he wasn't, he was in his home state, not far from home. So when you talk about, a true freshman getting meaningful snaps over the course of an entire game, starting his first collegiate game, being in his home state, the pressure not being, too much for him. I think, you got to like what you saw. I think, he's a guy that has all the measurables. The kid is a stallion. I mean, he's like, seeing him in person, and I've seen him a couple times now, having been at Hard Rock, and seeing him now, having been at the game and, here in Atlanta. I mean, the kid, if he puts on a little bit of weight, just a little, a little bit of weight, obviously not to affect mobility and everything, but I mean, you have to like what you see from him, especially given that, again, it's first time starting, first week getting starter reps. A kid who, is a talented kid, was at, Elite 11. Fun enough, actually, the kid who started for Georgia Tech, Zach Pyron, he was an Elite 11 kid also. So they went head to head at the Elite 11 finals. So I like what I saw from Ja'Carri Brown. I honestly, man, gun to my head, I think he's probably the starter next year. In my opinion, I think, and when we're going to talk about, the recruiting and transfer portal and the whole deal, but, kind of, to kind of touch on that, I don't see how all three of those guys are back next year. I really don't. I don't. Ja'Carri Brown will be back. I don't see how Tyler Van Dyke and Jake Garcia are both back. And I think it's what we were talking about before the show. It's something that you're gonna have to accept. I know, looking at that roster, who it is that I want to stay and who wouldn't hurt my feelings if they left, if we're being honest. But I think there may be, some guys that are gone that maybe we didn't want to see gone. But I don't see a scenario that all three of those guys are back next year.
Yeah. I know Jake wanted to compete, I know that's for a fact. And I think that, unfortunately, I think he's more talented than what he was presented with this year, unfortunately.
Yeah.
If he enters the transfer portal, I wouldn't be surprised. I also wouldn't be surprised if TVD does, if Ja'Cory is going to be getting more reps, because Tanner Mordecai over at SMU is a senior. And I do see, if anything, if they go transfer portal, I do see Tyler Van Dyke taking over as quarterback of SMU, knows the system, knows the coach, and he knows it could improve his draft stock, because he'll be able to light it up again, once again. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of them goes, or two of the, even both of them go, as far as the transfer portal goes. Ja'Cory also, to be honest with you, Will, kind of fits Mario's system a bit better. Mario's always like the dual threat quarterback. Justin Herbert was used as a dual threat quarterback, or Oregon. Brown over in Oregon, the same thing as well. So it's no surprise that they're putting a lot of stock in Ja'Cory. Jaden Rashada, we're gonna jump into recruiting right now. It hurt to see Jaden Rashada go, because Jaden Rashada also fits the system that Mario wants to run as well. Because Jaden Rashada not only has a great arm, was not only very accurate based on the videos I've seen of him. He could also run, if he's in trouble. So that is, I would do consider that a loss to the Canes. I'm not gonna bash the kid. I've heard some horrible things online, in particular about a 17-year-old, but I think it's kind of pathetic. I'm not gonna bash the kid. He has the right to make that decision. I think in the long run, it's gonna benefit Emory Williams more. I don't think Jaden realizes he's competing against another 4-star, Marcus Stokes. Billy Napier recruited a very good quarterback as well. He was gonna be coming in next year with Jaden, so that will be an open position, as far as it goes for Florida. But nonetheless, that was a huge loss for the Canes. And we just found out that Gilbert Frierson is heading for the transfer portal. Not surprised. He's got his degree. That's very common with graduate students. They tend to try to go try their legs out in different teams, i.e. Silvera, also Corey Gaynor, who was a punch in the gut because he went to North Carolina instead of going somewhere else. Now we see Frierson doing the same thing.
Gervin Hall.
Gervin Hall as well.
With Utah State. He went over there to play for forgot his name now.
Oh my gosh, Banda.
Yeah, Efrain
Efrain
Banda,
Banda, yeah.
who's a DC at Utah State.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it happens. I feel like, there's some guys now on that team that, at the risk of sounding like I'm bashing them, and I'm really not. I mean, a guy like DJ Ivy, who is it's maddening. It's maddening to watch DJ Ivy play sometimes, because you look at his measurables, right? It was the same thing with Gilbert Frierson.
Yeah.
Those guys are athletes. Those guys are specimens. When you would see them in person, they look the part. But DJ Ivy is like, every year coming in was like, oh man, he was the spring practice, defensive MVP. He was, oh man, DJ Ivy's making strides. DJ Ivy's doing this. DJ Ivy's doing that. He's blah blah blah. And then come Saturdays, you're like, oh my God, DJ Ivy, Lord have mercy. Like, what are you doing? So there's a few guys like that, and it's not really just single him out, but I think again, it's what one of the problems that I think that we've had there. And again, it's not a secret, is we just haven't developed guys have not developed at Miami the way that they should have. I get that not every player is going to live up to the star ranking. Like, I understand that. That happens at Alabama, that happens at Georgia, that happens at Ohio State, that happens at all the top programs. But we've been consistently underachieving at player development, at Miami. And when you look at some of those guys who come in highly ranked, don't do that great, and then all of a sudden now you're looking at they're making an NFL roster. So you're like, okay, so where's the weak point? It's their time at Miami.
Yeah.
They haven't been developed. In terms of Jaden Rashada, it sucked to lose him, because by all accounts he's a great quarterback at the high school level. I think Emory Williams may show at some point in time that he was the right guy to keep in this class. He's a guy whose recruitment has kind of steadily, progressed, and he's been offered by Florida State, by Auburn, by it's a bunch of big schools. Miami was on him pretty early, but I think we're going to be fine with him. I think he's going to be one of those kids that, if you listen to Josh Pate talk about him, Josh Pate loves the guy. He tells a story about being at Elite 11, and I'm sure you've seen that story with Josh Pate, that he raves about Emory Williams and all the testing and everything that they kind of put him through, and how he excelled at at the off field type stuff, and the interview process. He smoked. You saw him on one of the interviews with Josh Pate, I think Steve Wilfong, if I'm not mistaken, and he looked like he was running the interview. So that just goes to show the kid is mature. He's mature beyond his years. He's a kid who's going to come in and more likely kind of assume a leadership role when it's his time. So you have to like what you have in Emory Williams. Clearly, he's not as highly ranked as Jaden Rashada. The star rankings we've seen that are not everything. It's you have to develop these guys. Mm-hmm. So I'm not, even though I wanted him to stay, I'm not super worried about the position. Now, I think, again, it'll be a position in transition come the offseason, based on, again, I don't see a situation where Garcia and TVD both stay. Jakari obviously isn't going anywhere. You'll bring in Emory Williams. And then I can't imagine that the transfer portal wouldn't be in play for a body at the position. But I guess we'll just have to see, how that goes. Clearly, TVD came into this year with some hype. Was being mentioned as a possible first round pick. I don't see how he's done enough to justify leaving for the draft. Either he comes back to Miami or he transfers. I think he'd be insane at this point to leave for the NFL. I don't think that's realistic at this point.
Yeah, he's not going to the NFL. Like I told you, he either stays in Miami or I see him in an SMU uniform next year. That's pretty much.
No, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean,
yeah,
he's got experience with it, and plus, he's got to look and see, what Tyler Mordecai has done in that offense, and the numbers he's putting up. He's not the runner that Mordecai is. Obviously, there. Mordecai can move.
He's more mobile.
He can tuck that ball and go. But
But TBD's not a bad athlete though.
No,
Like I
he's
don't,
not.
I don't
No, no,
remember the
no.
25-yard
Yeah,
touchdown run against
yeah, yeah,
Virginia.
yeah.
I mean, he that was
No,
all him.
he's not a statue. No,
No, he's
I
not.
definitely no. He's not a statue. I think he's got the set of mobility. I think something that he didn't show enough of. I don't think he got the chance to show enough of, in his time in Miami, because I think they definitely should have used him more in that, kind of, the keepers and kind of, getting around when everybody. That's another thing. It's always like this. He's got the ball out here. There was never a threat of him, keeping it.
Running. Mhm.
And you saw nobody ever went for that fake. If he tucked it and turned the corner, he could multiple times a game he could gain a bunch of yards, and now obviously that gives you something else to worry about. We'll see about next year, man. I just like you mentioned, right? I mentioned Gaddis didn't forget how to coach. TVD didn't forget how to play quarterback. I think the second year is interesting with quarterbacks now, because you have tape on him. He's not a surprise to you anymore like TVD was last year. So I think there is some merit to that, and part of maybe his regression. But no matter what we thought we might see in terms of a second year regression, I don't think anybody expected it to be what it has been.
Yeah.
It's been a very, very, very steep regression with TVD, and I for one didn't expect to see that.
Yeah, no, neither did I. I thought he was gonna ball, to be honest with you.
100%.
In this offense, especially since the offensive line, I thought would be a strength of this team, because you have a coach that is heavily involved in the line. One thing I will say though, going back into recruiting, that although we lost Jaden Rashada, a lot of the recruits that have already committed in 2023, recruiting class, who are rumored to flip, have already said that we're not even going to take a visit to Florida. We want to show everybody that we are all in on Mario Cristobal. 5-star lineman Francis Malgua, has said that I'm not going to Florida. Tommy Kinsler said he's 100% committed. Connor Lew's 100% committed. Helped his dad is also a Canes fan. Is 100% committed. The Washington brothers are committed. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's from right up the road. Connor Lewis is from right up the road over here in Kennesaw.
Yeah. He's also the Washington brothers are 100% committed as well. Raul Aguirre and his father, dad's very vocal on Facebook. I love his dad. Are 100% committed, and now Malik Bryan, who's now rumored to flip. Gabby Urrutia came up with the whole, I think they're gonna flip. They're gonna flip Malik, and Malik's like, I'm 1,000% committed to Coach Cristobal and the Canes.
Did you say
I'm shutting down? Huh?
Did you hear what he said about when I'm playing on Sundays? Did you hear what he said about that?
Yeah, I'll be throwing up the U.
Yeah, when I'm playing on Sundays, I'll be able to say I graduated from the U. So
yeah, that was a great quote.
He's not going anywhere. So yeah, man. I mean, it was great to see, because I think anybody who's a fan, you're looking at that, and you're going, damn it, if he flipped, then like who's next? And as rival schools, I mean, you could negative recruit the hell out of Miami right now. Yeah. I mean, you really could, right? Especially on offense, right? You're looking at them and going, that's where you want to go play. Like, are you not seeing that? So, it felt, and I've seen some people criticizing, all the tweets and the whole deal. It felt, planned, and it felt, packaged. I guess something maybe, brought on by the coaches, and they'll do, hey, put it out that you're committed and the whole deal. Listen, I don't care how it came about. What I care about is they're putting out the right message. These guys are committed to coming in. Like Raul Aguirre is already saying, hey, listen, when we get there, we're taking jobs. Like, yeah, take it how you want to take it. So they're coming in, again, they have the right mentality now. They're going to come in and want to get that early playing time. They're coming in with the right mentality. They haven't lost anybody else, and even more so now. I mean, they're in it for a bunch of guys, a bunch of really highly recruited guys. This kid Samuel Mpemba just put out his top 4. Miami's top 4 is Canes. A lot of people are saying it's a Miami Georgia battle. We'll see how it goes. Samson Okunlola, who by most accounts is the number 2 tackle in the country. Everybody's saying it's Miami's to lose, so on and so forth. So there's still a bunch of guys out there that hold Miami in high regard, that they're still in it for. So I think I would imagine I'm not the only one that wants early recruiting or the early signing period to get here, to have those guys' name on the dotted line
Yeah.
and faxed over, because given the way the season could end, it's just more time for other schools to kind of come in and negatively recruit them and possibly flip some of these guys. It seems like they're all in. Everybody's kind of saying the right things, and again, the classes become they have apparently they have this running group chat that they're all in together.
Yeah, they're all on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
WhatsApp together. Mm-hmm.
And so Jaden Rashad actually put it on there, which was, I mean, I guess it's classy. I guess. I mean, he told me, hey man, like I'm out, and it is what it is. No hard feelings, and nobody else. The other thing that was great, because like you were mentioning, right? You get some of these guys, man. You get adults that are bashing these dudes. I mean, these guys, they're high school kids at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I get you can say whatever you want and act a fool, I guess, if you want to, man. But I don't see how that helps anything. I don't see how getting on Twitter and blasting these guys and the whole deal for decommitting, like they're more than whether they're right to, So the fact that they decommit, man, again, you're gonna get on there, man. You're a grown man, you're an adult, and you're sitting there like going at these guys on Twitter. I don't get it. I can't relate to it. It's not my style. It's not what I do. I hate to see them decommit, but at the end of the day, they're free to do what they want to.
Yeah.
And as a fan, you just have to sit back and be like, man, look, I've said it and I'll say it again. I trust Mario. I trust the staff. I trust that they're going to bring in talent and they're going to continue to acquire it, develop it, put it in the right positions to succeed and win games. That's really what I'm looking at. We're in it for a bunch of big guys still. There's a lot of guys out there who they're rumored to be in it for and even in the lead for. We'll see what early signing day brings. But I'm excited to see how they close and who they bring in. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm excited too, and I like the fact these guys came out and said that, because it goes to show they're all in the coaching staff, and the fact they're all in the coaching staff, it means that they believe in the coaching staff, and so you want. I mean, like one of the complaints I saw online is like, well, we want guys that want to be Canes. I'm like, you also have to understand another thing. A lot of the kids growing up now never saw the 01 Canes, don't know anything about, the 80s Canes, the early 90s Canes that won championships. They can't relate to that class, in particular. And on top of that, you're also recruiting out of state. This kid's from Pittsburgh, California, in particular. He probably had more of a connection to USC, than he does to the U. So him decommitting is not a surprise, in particular. So the fact that you have Aguirre, the fact you have Lou, might go basically telling Florida, just leave me alone. I'm not talking to you anymore. And so that's good, because they're all in on the coaching staff. They'll run through a wall for Mario. And that's what you want out of your players. You want them to be, fully committed to your philosophy, to your schematics, and to what and the goals that you want for this football team. So I'm glad they came out. I'm glad they basically said, I'm not going anywhere. Leave me alone. Don't mess with me, and so on. Don't formulate opinions for me, as far as if I'm going or not. I'm 100% committed. So that's the deal. So I'm very happy that they did that. And you're right. I can't wait till the early signing period so that you just sign and you're committed.
Yeah, I think no matter what, man. I mean, even with those guys coming out and saying the right things, it is music to your ears, because it's what you want to hear as a fan. But I'd be lying if I said that the weeks leading up to early signing day are not going to be stressful. Like, what we can kind of assume is going to happen at Clemson, right? And now you come home, against Pitt for your last game, 6-6. Again, there's a lot of ways that you can negatively recruit this team. There's a lot of ways that you can try and fill a recruit's heads with, hey, are you seeing this? Hey, look at what they're doing. Hey, look at what they're not doing there. And you hope that they're not falling for it. The right guys are saying the right things, in my opinion, when it comes to the recruits. And it's what we have to continue to hope is the case moving forward, and that those guys just continue to do work and convince these guys, hey, listen, this is an outlier. Like, this is not your future. This is our present. This is not your future when you get here. It will be different. You will be developed. We will win. We're going to win consistently at a high level. And you just have to hope that those guys are listening and are bought in. It's all you can really hope for at this point. Because again, you definitely can't convince them with the product on the field. It's not where we're at, unfortunately. And moving forward, we just have to hope that changes, and the staff lives up to the billing. These are guys that were being called the Avengers when we talked about
Yeah.
that before the season started. So obviously it's not a name that they came up with for themselves, but it's a testament to the fact that people thought highly of what this staff has been and is going to be. And I think moving forward, it's going to get better. I really truly feel like they're going to live up to it, and in the very near future they're really going to start to put it together and win consistently.
Yeah. Before I let you go and before we conclude the recruiting, one last note, and this is a bit off the cuff. I really hope they find a way to keep DeMarcus Van Dyke. I know he's a Cane, keep DeMarcus Van Dyke, because the rumors out that he's the one that got Cormani to commit, and he's the one that's pushing for Damari Brown. And he's the one that I think I'll watch it. T-Rob got, I think T-Rob might have gotten credit for. I don't know who got credit for James Williams, and so on. But bottom line is that DeMarcus Van Dyke, as he's defensive analyst, for the Canes right now, and he has sealed the deal on the top DBs that we've picked up so far in this upcoming recruiting class. So if Jamal Adai goes elsewhere, don't be surprised if DeMarcus Van Dyke takes over that position, or he gets a co-coordinator position in the future, because that's somebody you cannot afford to lose. Yeah. And Commander McCline said he liked them a lot because he's not that old. He's in his early 30s. Yeah. So he found him quite relatable.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Jamal Adai is not 40.
No, I know. But that's what he said about DeMarcus. I mean, in particular, DeMarcus got the credit for the Cormani recruiting, and so on.
You definitely have a good mix of guys on that team.
Yeah.
Staff wise, I mean, on both sides of the ball, because you have and especially when you take into consideration your off field guys, the guys that aren't, because you get your 10 on field guys, but the off field staff is young, it's relatable, and again, that's something we haven't touched on. The off field staff does a great job too. You talk about guys like Roland Smith and Pata and Van Dyke and all these guys with the South Florida connections. You can't underestimate that. Jason Taylor is there.
Taylor, I was going to say Jason too.
So there's a lot to like about that staff, man. And again, I go back to it. The staff is there. The staff is there, man. Like I feel like the momentum's going to grow. It's going to build, and we're going to start to see the progress. Like, we're going to turn the corner. We're going to see the progress. The staff is there, man. Like, on both sides of the ball, you have guys that have been there, have done that. The guys that are established, and the guys that you don't hear as much about that are on the younger side, who are kind of ascending in the coaching ranks, and guys who build connections and are in contact with these recruits all the time. I don't see a scenario, man. And it's not just me being a fan and everything, even though that is a huge part of it, obviously, because I want to see them back, to prominence. But I believe in the staff. I believe in Mario. I believe in what it is he's going to do, what it is he's done already. I think the future is bright, man. I just think the future is bright for a lot of reasons. You have the support of the school. Dan Radakovich is the right guy for the job at AD. They've convinced a lot of people to spend a lot of money and build facilities and the whole deal. Like, it's all there, man. It's all there. And I think moving forward, the future's bright, and I think they're going to figure this thing out, and sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. Despite my my reservations about the future of Josh Gaddis with his team, whether he's let go or he takes a job somewhere, I do think with the history of Mario putting guys in the NFL, first rounders, by the way, on just 4 years alone at Oregon, he's got the resume to kind of that's kind of evident that he can do it. Okay, William, a pleasure talking to you again. I had a wonderful time. Right, we had a good time back and forth. Canes talk. I love talking Canes. So it's always a good joy.
Same.
Yeah, man.
Same. I'm here for it all the time, man. You know how I get down, man. That's my squad through
I know.
The good and the not so. I'm here for it. So I think better days are ahead, man. Better days are ahead, and it's not the season that we expected. I'm hoping that early signing day, gives us something to be excited about, and let's hope they can close this thing out, at least make a bowl, get those 15 extra practices. That would go a long way for some of these young guys. Hopefully the parents are behaving on Twitter moving forward, and they shut the hell up and let the coaches do their job. And again, just some stuff that they have to work through, man. That's evidence right there.
Yeah, for the fans out there, I'm speaking just from personal experience. That think that they're gonna get on the kids because of what the parents are doing. I used to coach soccer, at my old high school, Southwest Senior High School, and I used to get it from the parents all the time, and we never took it out on the kid. We just thought the parent was just crazy, so
yeah.
So don't worry. Kamari Rogers is not gonna do any more wind sprints, or Keyshawn Smith is not gonna get benched, because of mom, I do think parents need to stay in their lane, honestly speaking, let the coaches do, or just be an adult and call them personally and be like, hey, listen, why did my kid play today? Instead of trying to get 500,000 views on YouTube, for
on Twitter, like really, like that's how you want to address things. Like you're gonna go at the guy on Twitter, call him a piece of work, and like, come on, man, like approach the, like if there's an issue, even though, and I say approach him. I think that you need to, like you mentioned, stay in your lane. Like this isn't rec ball.
Yeah.
This is a rec ball. This is Division I. This is Division I big boy football.
Mm-hmm.
Like your kid is a 4-star athlete, a highly recruited kid, and from all reports that the kid can't keep on any weight. Like he's like this. The kid's a beanpole.
I know.
It's not that he's not a talented kid, but obviously he's showing something that is keeping him off the field.
That's the problem with Cyrus Moss. He's too thin.
Exactly.
They're waiting for him to fill out. Wesley Bassane was tiny. Well, not tiny because he was tall, but he was tiny in terms of frame. When he was recruited by Coach Diaz, and he put on weight. He's much bigger. And this year's a freshman. He was a senior at Central. Yeah. So I mean, so that's perfectly logical. Why Kamari can't get on the field, but he will eventually. He is talented. He came highly recruited. Yeah. And I do like this coaching staff. Go ahead.
Coming off an injury, you got to remember me, kid. He got injured late in his senior season.
Yeah, he did too. Yep.
So it's not that he's not a talented kid. Listen, man, you do what the coaches are asking of you, and it'll work out. But again, man, to see the parents, again, that just tells you, that they're still working through some stuff in that locker room and in that program that, that they're not where they're going to be. They have to get rid of some kids. And I'm not rooting for Kamari Rogers not be there, but hey, listen, I mean, if you don't feel like you're happy here, then, hit the road.
Yeah, take the portal. That's the only thing I can say.
That's it. Do I want you to go? No. Obviously, the kid is talented, but Chris Graves is there, is another talented kid that hasn't really got a lot of run, and you don't hear him or his parents on them Twitter going at anybody or complaining or whatever it is. So, that's how it goes, man. I mean, you have to earn your spot. You got to wait your turn, and if you're not happy with it, man, then the portal's there. Yeah. Go ahead and jump on in.
My favorite line was Keyshawn's mom. Well, what coach goes into a locker room and says, "This is the worst team I've ever coached"? How is that positive? I'm like, oh my god, these parents. God.
If you're looking to be coddled and you're looking for, for it to be rainbows and unicorns, man, like, go somewhere else.
Yeah, he's not a coddling guy. I mean, Cristobal's a guy that people say that kids feel like he does care about them. He's like a father figure, but he's like that old school dad that's gonna kick you in the pants. He's not gonna call to you. And you'll earn your playing time.
Like, if that's what you're offended by, by that particular statement, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you, man. But again, it's like we mentioned, there's going to be some guys that are going to hit the portal that, again, people are saying that December is going to be a whirlwind and it's going to be crazy with people moving left and right. And I tend to believe it. I think December is going to be something that we've never seen before with player movement. So we'll see where that all goes. But I'm just ready for that early signing day to get here and get some of these guys name on the dotted line and get them into the program and get this thing turned around.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. But William, thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us again. Had a great time. All right, had a great time. Always, all right, man. If you like what you heard, please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to 305 Sports Now. Once again, for William Quintero, I am William Padron. Be safe. God bless. See you soon.